Welcome to an Irish cottage in the woods. This video is the first in what I hope will be quite a long series of gardening without a garden. It came about because a friend of mine said I was always going on about the time when I grew stuff on a balcony in a London tower block when I was a student, and could I reproduce it. That balcony was in a 1960s built tower block and was approximately 3.5 metres by 1.5 metres, or 12 foot by 4 foot roughly. So the space I've allocated for this little experiment is the side of the cottage, and from that end of the cottage to that end is about 4.4 metres, very roughly 15 feet. And the concrete skirt that I'm going to be using as my garden without a garden is approximately 90 centimetres front to back, or 3 foot deep. So I've got about 45 square feet in old money, which is about the same size as my balcony was. I'm also painfully aware that an awful lot of people have very little money at the moment. So I'm going to try to do this as much on a budget as I can. And this is so that you can provide your family with a little bit of fresh food, even if you've never gardened before, got no experience and hardly any money. So we'll start with what I've got as the basic kit for today. Today I'm going to be planting potatoes. I started them chitting a couple of weeks back. You don't need to chit them, but it does give them a better start. And I've used 3 of them. They could just as easily be 3 potatoes out of the bag of spuds you're cooking for tonight's dinner. They don't have to be seed potatoes. Every potato is potentially a seed potato. The difference between buying deliberately grown seed potatoes is that they will be disease resistant, they will be blight resistant, and they will be certified, and you will know exactly which breed and type they are. If you just buy them from your local greengrocers, that may not be true. I don't recommend saving from those seeds for future years, but as a one-off I've done it several times and you will get a meal or 2 out of it, all being well. So there are 3 little potatoes down there by the pink plant pot. The pink plant pot had, I'm trying to get the sun out of it and I'm doing very badly here, so I'll step away. There we go. That pink plant pot had a plant in that I've since planted out into the garden. If you don't have a garden, you don't have any spare plant pots, I'm sure if you ask your gardening friends, they've dozens of spare plant pots. And you'll see what that's for in a minute. The most important piece of kit are my gardening gloves. Mine are really old and battered, but I do recommend you wear gardening gloves. I wear them every time because I have eczema. But even if you don't, it'll stop your hands getting so very sore. And you can pick up gardening gloves. They were, you bought 2 pairs in a pack, and I think they were only a few pounds or a few euros or a few dollars, and I recommend you do that because for the sake of 2 or 3 pounds, dollars, euros, whatever your currency, it will save your hands getting very sore and wet and cold. Those are actually cotton ones, so they don't stop me getting wet, but you can get the sort that are waterproof too. There's a bag of compost. I'm not sponsored in any way by any company. That just happened to be the bag of compost that I was able to buy at my local garden centre. It's, I think, 150 litres. I'll have a look about that in a minute. And that's all the compost I'm going to be using in this little garden. And if I fail miserably and end up having to buy a second bag, I will let you know. And those are 3 old compost bags scrounged from around the place that we're going to plant the potatoes into. Now, I do recommend you use actual compost bags. I know people who use other carrier bags and the bags that other things came in, but unless they've got a black liner like that, the light will get through and your potatoes will go green and poisonous. So do try and scrounge a few compost bags off a gardening friend, or save your old compost bags that have these black inner liners. I'm going to stop now and I'm going to set the camera up, hopefully on something where it won't fall off. If you watched the last video, I failed miserably. And I'm going to plant the potatoes. Having said the gloves are the most important tool, and I will put them on, the next most important tool I've got here is a trowel. I don't think you need a lot of expensive tools to garden. I really don't. I've never used many, but a decent trowel is worth getting. That's the most important bit of a trowel, because if that bends, it's useless. And as you can see, I've had this one a few years, which is pretty good going for me because I usually lose them. It wasn't a particularly expensive trowel. I'm going to crackle, I'm sorry. But you do need one. I'm now rolling down the bag. There's already a whacking hole in this bag, so it doesn't need any further holes in it. The other two, on the other hand, may well need drainage holes. Yeah, these two had no holes in. So by the simple expedience of rubbing them with a trowel, I've made a hole, which probably is both sides, enough to drain them. And I'll do the same with the other one, and then I'll put compost in to about halfway up the trowel handle. So about 20 centimetres or 8 inches if you're still working imperial. And now you'll see why I kept the plant pot. No specialist tools required for filling the bags. Although I have now filled all 3 bags to the depth of about 20 centimetres, 8 inches, if you come and look, I've only actually used about a quarter of this bag of compost. And that's because when you buy a bag of multi-purpose compost like this, when it first arrives, I can show you, it's actually quite compacted, and you fluff it up as you use it. So each one of these has been fluffed up as it's gone in. I've used the plant pot for that purpose, and I'm now about to plant the potatoes. Oh, incidentally, you might see, let's see if I can find one. There, look, little white balls in the compost. Here we go. That's not a slug's egg, that's feed, because this is multi-purpose compost I'm using. And that's a potato. And see the little chits on the potato, the little sprouts and the roots? All I'm going to do is ease it in and just cover it. That really is how to plant a potato in a bag. And why have I planted it in a bag? Well, because potatoes need to be earthed up. Earthing up is simply the pulling up of, oh actually, I'll go back to that one. I'll come back to earthing up. That has a little bit of mould on it. That doesn't matter for the purposes of planting it. Now, earthing up we will probably cover in more detail in future weeks. But as the potato plant grows, it will actually send out roots above soil level. That's why I rolled down the plastic bags. That gives room so that I can roll them up, put a bit of extra in, tip the leaves up to the top and earth them up. If we're threatened with frost, I'll come and cover them over, because potatoes are not hardy plants and they will be nipped off by the frost, as a lot of people discovered last year, because today is the 6th of March. These little 3 are in the garden without a garden. The rest are going up on the vegetable plots, and they won't get quite as much love and attention there. And they may get nipped off by a late frost. Here on the west coast of Ireland, we're probably past the worst of the frost. We may still get the odd one. Where I used to live in England, we got frost until as late as May. So you'll need to plant your potatoes according to your local area. But round here they say you should have them in the ground before St Paddy's Day, which is in a couple of weeks' time. So we try to get them in before St Patrick's Day, early March, mainly because Ireland suffers so badly with blight. If you're somewhere where the climate dictates a little bit later, don't worry, they'll catch up. I didn't get my garlic in this year till January. You're supposed to plant that in November, so you know, we catch up. Nature has its way of dealing with it. Now, just to give you a little bit more of a heads up about this gardening space, that was my studio. That was what I propped the camera up on. That corner of the building faces almost exactly due west. Therefore, this is a southwest facing concrete wall, and that corner faces almost exactly due south. So it doesn't do too badly. It gets quite a bit of sun. It's a little bit sheltered because there's a bank there and there's the old bothy, but the winds do howl across, and this end in particular is much more exposed, so I may need to put some protection up if we have high winds. And then beyond we've got the fairy wood. So it'd be interesting to see how well they do here on this little garden without a garden, and I may need to give them a little bit of protection. And over the coming weeks the plan is to grow a few other bits and pieces along here, maybe some runner beans up the wall and some little stubby carrots, which I may grow in plant pots or bags. But the idea being that even if you don't have a garden, if all you've got is a little pathway at the side of your house like this, or a balcony if you live in a London tower block as I did, you should be able to grow something that you can eat at the end of the day, other than flipping radishes. I don't know anybody who actually likes radishes.